I'm going on right now, okay? Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. You got a little bonus edition of a classic Frankly Speaking for the first few minutes here. I'm so glad that you stuck with us, and thank you for all the waves and everybody waiting patiently. We have so much to talk about this morning, and of course, we start with the tragic wildfires. This is, we talk about Tiffany Henyard, and someone was asking me the other day if there had been any updates on Tiffany Henyard, and that's the Dolton, Illinois. Bear with me where I'm going with this. The Dolton, Illinois mayor, and we bring her up. She calls herself the super mayor. We bring her up because of the dysfunction. We could use stronger words, but we don't want to. But they went from a surplus to a deficit, and there's been audits, et cetera, et cetera. So we mention her so often on this program because we say it's so important to know who you're voting for locally, on the local level, right? Well, that seems to be ringing true as well with the wildfires. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass faced scorching criticism as it was revealed she cut the city's fire department budget $6 million ahead of this week's devastating fires. She prioritized the money, taking it from the fire department, to fund the massive homeless population that largely went unspent. Now, we can talk about the LA mayor. We can talk about Governor Gavin Newsom, who yesterday took the opportunity to blame local officials for the lack of water. Again, a prime example of why it is so important to know who you are voting for. Now, the cut in Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass's budget, it's the second largest in the 2024-2025 fiscal budget. Now, why in LA would you cut your fire budget? That is a recipe for disaster. But if she had her way, that LAFD budget would have been slashed by $23 million. So she wanted to actually cut even further to $23 million, but she did not get her way, and they only cut it by $17.6 million. And that speaks to a larger issue with the homelessness problem in LA, that she wanted the funds, though it did go largely unspent, to go to the homeless population. And that's why many have really went after Gavin Newsom, including President Trump, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. As he is considering running for president, many thought he may even replace Biden at one point. But Gavin Newsom, with his homelessness problem, and now blaming local officials for the lack of water. Also, this comes on the heels of the mayor, Karen Bass, not even being in town while this is happening. We're going to talk about that as well. But again, slashing fire department funding by $17.6 million, and not as much as she wanted, the $23 million. So thank you for all the waves coming in. Thanks for waiting patiently. Oh, by the way, we did have a comment yesterday because we were talking about money in government, et cetera, et cetera. And I want to thank the viewer who, and I know this story, it's a really interesting story, but the government paid William Smith of Chemung County not to grow crops. And with the money that he received, he bought a Cadillac and publicized it, made a big deal about it. And I've heard this story for years, and such an amazing story. And he then became senator, and he was known as Cadillac Smith. So thank you for that. That was in reference to the conversation we were having yesterday. Thank you for all the waves. Keep the conversation coming in. Let's see what we have here. No, it was not. It was tech difficulties. Yes, we had a little internet problem, so not car troubles, thank heavens. But we are live now. Saw on the news that South America is all for the Gulf of America. Interesting. Did you see that Blinken was suggesting that the purchase of Greenland is a bad idea? That makes me think even further that perhaps it's a great idea. We're going to talk about some responses to that a little bit later on. We do have a lot to cover, but I want to continue talking about the wildfires. On tomorrow's program, we were originally going to broadcast it this morning, but because of the technical difficulties, I wasn't sure if we'd be able to pull it off. So Christine Towner is going to tell us about the Senior Companion Program tomorrow. And either tomorrow or Monday, we'll also be talking with Kelly Fitzpatrick, who is the chair of the Steuben County Legislature. Really looking forward to catching up with her. So we'll be talking with her, and I'll keep you updated on that as the morning unfolds. So thanks for bearing with us. We better take a break, catch up, catch our breath. But thank you for joining us, and we will be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Today's top story, increasing fuel costs continue to drive up inflation, making it harder to afford everything from food to home heating.
Here at Hustlesons, we know the only way to beat inflation is to fight inflation. So we're fighting back with zero interest financing and big cash rebates. Get a 4-person hot tub for your family for as little as $100 per month and pay zero interest. Or save up to $3,000 on a fabulous salt system hot tub. And of course, you will always get Hustlesons' unbelievable service. Don't let inflation fears kill your dreams. Fight back with Hustlesons. Remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hustlesons.
The Fox website is here now. WYDCTV.com. Local and national news that keeps you informed and involved. WYDCTV.com. Today's weather, up to date and in your town. WYDCTV.com. Sports news, local events, and health stories that affect you. WYDCTV.com. The Big Fox website. Your news here now. WYDCTV.com.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Give them a call today for all your business and home security needs. Yes, we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, still getting all of our news and our show prep together. We had a little technical difficulty this morning. Amazing how dependent we all are on the internet. But I do thank you for being patient. Keep those waves, keep those comments coming in. We were talking about the fires. We also have a few things here to update you on about the Trump administration, about Biden. But with LA Mayor Karen Bass cutting fire department funding by $17.6 million, there's been a major focus on her because of that. And then I don't know if you saw, it's awkward. When she returned to LA, yes, I said return. These fires are going. And yet she was in, was it Guam? Well, she became stone-faced when confronted by a reporter as she returned to America to find her city burning on Wednesday. Sky News reporter David Blevins asked Bass, quote, "Do you owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning? And do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor?" She wouldn't respond. He said, do you absolutely have nothing to say to the citizens today? She just stared. Perhaps the worst possible way to handle the situation. Standing just feet away from the plane's ramp as she awaited clearance to leave, she stared blankly at Belvin's question, refusing to provide an answer or even acknowledge his presence. As she walked up the ramp into the airport, she continued to ignore the reporter as he followed and asked for comment. "No apology for them," he yelled. "Do you think you should have been visiting Ghana? I'm sorry, not Guam. Ghana, while this was unfolding back home? Madam Mayor, let me ask you again. Have you anything to say to the citizens today as you return?" Extremely uncomfortable. Many residents going to Twitter, going to X to chastise her. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass is on taxpayer-funded trip to Africa as part of a Biden administration presidential delegation. in all caps, while her city is burning to the ground, said Ashley Hack. This is insane. Now, the mayor had been under fire for being 7,400 miles away in Africa to attend the inauguration of Ghana's president as the wildfires devoured Los Angeles. And I know the president-elect Donald Trump calling it almost apocalyptic, and it is. The photos are heartbreaking. The destruction that these fires have left behind at one point, and I'm not sure if this has changed, but as of late yesterday, still at 0% containment. Now, Megyn Kelly accused the Los Angeles Fire Department Chief Kristen Crowley and LA Mayor Karen Bass of putting DEI initiatives ahead of fire prevention. Now, again, cutting that $17.6 million, and you're saying, well, did she give it back to taxpayers? No, it was used for the homelessness epidemic in LA, but not even used. In recent years, LA's fire chief has made not filling the fire hydrants a top priority. She's actually made diversity the top priority. Diversity is at least among the top priorities of the department. This again, Megyn Kelly, who and she uses language I can't use, but she talks about what initiatives they were focused on. Can you fight fires? Can you make sure there's water in the fire hydrants? This was foreseeable, and what we are seeing largely preventable. And there's been a lot. Trump has been talking about it for years, especially in reference to kind of attacking Gavin Newsom, about the fact that they needed to be prepared with water. We're going to tell you what his tweet had to say. But imagine, and this again, I know it sounds like a jump, but it really isn't. When we talk about Tiffany Henyard and other officials, and we highlight them for their, for lack of a better word, alleged corruption, in this case, ignorance perhaps, why it is so important to know who you are voting for. Oh, hey, got a lot of comments coming in. Thank you. President Trump saying Governor Gavin Newsom, he calls him, refused to sign the water restoration declaration put before him that would have allowed millions of gallons of water from excess rain and snowmelt from the north to flow daily into many parts of California, including the areas that are currently burning in a virtually apocalyptic way. He wanted to protect an essentially worthless fish called a smelt by giving it less water. It didn't work, but didn't care about the people of California. Now the ultimate price is being paid. I will demand that this incompetent governor allow beautiful, clean, fresh water to flow into California. He is to blame for this. On top of it all, no water for fire hydrants, not firefighting planes, a true disaster. And just to show you the lack of leadership when it comes to Gavin Newsom, he took the opportunity yesterday to blame local officials for the issue. Can you imagine that? Oh, here's a good comment from a viewer. California is noted for the first to do stuff. Yes, unfortunately, they're normally the first to do something, a bad idea, and then New York says, oh, look, they're going to do that. We should come up with a bad idea. How about a fire tax on the wealthy to fund fire departments? It doesn't sound like funding was really an issue. It seems to me it was Karen Bass choosing, much like Megyn Kelly was saying, DEI initiatives and the like, focusing the money that was to go to the fire departments on homeless spending, which you can say, well, that's fine spending on homeless. And I would agree, but she wanted to cut the fire department budget by $23 million. Instead, she cut it by $17.6 million. So she prioritized massive homeless population spending that, this is the important point to know, that went unspent. It was not used for the homeless population. And so unfortunately, at this time, we are seeing the repercussions of that. Now, Trump did blame Gavin Newsom, but he also took the opportunity to thank none other than Joe Biden. He posted on Truth Social, no water in the fire hydrants, no money in FEMA. This is what Joe Biden is leaving me. Thanks, Joe. Not pulling any punches, as we would expect from President-elect Donald Trump. All right, hey, thanks for the waves. Really appreciate it. It's going to be back up on the air. Now, Biden did respond to that. We're going to talk to this as well. We're going to talk about that. We've got a whole bunch of different issues. I actually have and we're not going to have an opportunity probably to bring it up till later, but I have another example of why you should know who you are voting for. As I mentioned, Christine Towner, I know I promoted this yesterday on the program because this program that they have is amazing. Senior Companion Program. And it's a way to volunteer, and the volunteer has stipend, where you can help the elderly stay in their homes. We're going to learn all about that, but we're going to learn about it on tomorrow's program. If you attended yesterday's forum over Zoom on how to run for local office, so we talked with Andy Petros early this week. I was thinking late last week, but early this week about that forum, how to run for local office. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, and are you considering it? And if you are considering running for local office, we would love to, and I know it's early, but we'd love to have you on the program at some point to talk about your campaign, talk about why you're running. So keep that in mind as the campaign unfolds, to reach out to me at that number on the bottom of the screen and say, hey, I'd love to be on the show. I'm running for whatever the case may be. All right, let's take another short break. Then a little catch up. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, please stay with us.
Getting the right representation.
It matters.
Hiring a law firm whose focus is motor vehicle accident cases.
It matters.
Hiring a firm with the experience and resources to maximize your recovery.
It matters.
William Mattar is the largest motor vehicle accident firm in New York State. We got that way by winning. If you're hurt in a car, it matters who you hire. Call William Mattar. Visit WilliamMattar.com.
At John G. Ullman & Associates, our clients come first. As a fiduciary, we build personalized plans rooted in our shared ethics and values.
And you've been doing this for 45 years?
Yes, our in-house team creates custom plans built for you and your family.
We like the idea of a relationship that lasts.
That's what we're all about, helping you and your family build and protect wealth for generations. John G. Ullman & Associates, here for everything your money touches.
Most docs recommend daily walks because of the many health benefits associated with walking. But how do you get healthy circulation boosting activity without leaving your chair? With Legzercise Pro, the natural circulation booster that uses continuous automatic leg movement to soothe pain and promote healthy circulation the natural drug-free way. Soothe pain and calm restless legs. Reduce swelling in your legs, ankles, and feet, and stimulate healthy circulation. Stay active with Legzercise Pro.
Fox website is here now. WYDCTV.com. Local and national news that keeps you informed and involved. WYDCTV.com. Today's weather up to date and in your town. WYDCTV.com. Sports news, local events, and health stories that affect you. WYDCTV.com. The Big Fox website. Your news here now. WYDCTV.com.
Some of these tweets to the LA mayor, a little rough. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you for joining us. We're talking about LA Mayor Karen Bass. Resign. Why are you in Ghana? Said one resident. They put together some of the, hey Karen, how's Ghana? LA, you ask? Yeah, it's burning to the blanking ground. But it's better you're not here anyway because you're useless, said another Twitter user. Others demanded that she resign from her post. Now, she took office back in 2022. You're a disgrace and an embarrassment, said one comment. You need to resign. You're incompetent. LA developer Rick Caruso, who lost the 2022 mayoral race, against Bass, called out his former opponent for her failure. It's all about leadership management that we're seeing a failure of. And all these residents are paying the ultimate price for that. When asked why there wasn't water in some fire hydrants after emergency responders battling the growing blazes report bone-dry hydrants, Caruso pointed the blame directly at LA Mayor Karen Bass. I think you should start asking, why don't you call the mayor, who is out of the country, and ask her. Get an answer from her. Former U.S. Acting Director of National Intelligence, Richard Grenell, also noted Bass's absence, saying the national media hasn't even mentioned that Karen Bass is in Africa while our city is literally burning to the ground. Yeah, and that, raises a very good point there. If this were a Republican mayor and a Republican governor, we know the coverage would be completely different. Now, of course, there would be the reporting, as we're seeing, of the disaster, and it's just heartbreaking to see the destruction. But this is a failure of leadership, and you have Gavin Newsom blaming local leaders. That's what a real leader does, blaming people underneath his position. And we mentioned the Trump calling out Mr. Newsom. I don't know if he's weighed in on Karen Bass. Again, Karen Bass cutting funding for wildfires. That just seems, by $17.6 million, by the way. But that just seems like a recipe for disaster. How could you justify that in California? It's shocking to me. Now, Biden had an awkward announcement, and we are going to get to some other things on this, and the whole show is not just going to be focused on this, but it is such an important topic. Also, if nothing else, to view why it is so important to know who you're voting for and to see the failure in leadership where you may not see that reporting elsewhere. As I just noted from that Twitter user, this is not getting the coverage. The fires themselves are, of course, getting the coverage, but the lack of leadership is not getting the coverage. Why? Because of the team they're on. That the media and well, really just the media, but the politicians as well, don't want to focus on this stunning failure at every level of government in LA. Now, Biden became a great-grandfather Wednesday when his granddaughter Naomi gave birth in Los Angeles. But this is awkward because he began his announcement with the good news as 3 large wildfires raged nearby. Yes. The good news is I'm a great-grandfather as of today. I'll remember this day for a lot of reasons, he said. That's an awkward way to start a press conference or to start a conversation about the wildfires. It's astonishing what has happened. Only one piece of good news. My son lives out here and his wife. They got notification yesterday that their home was probably burned to the ground. Today it appears that it's still standing. They're not sure. Here is another prime example, and we're going to talk about Joe Biden a little bit later on. Joe Biden always turning the story into his story. What I mean is, if you recall, when he was meeting with grieving parents after Afghanistan and those that lost their loved ones in the Afghanistan withdrawal. Remember, he turned it to stories about his son Bo and turned it about his tragedies. Same here. You start a conversation about the wildfires in LA that have destroyed so many homes, multi-millions of dollars. Cost, last I saw, I think 5 lives. And you start with, hey, here's the good news. Already, you should be saying, read the room, President Biden. But then to talk about your family's house that you thought was burnt down but isn't, just seems so wrong-headed. Quote, it's astonishing what has happened. Only one piece of good news. My son lives out here and his wife. They got a notification yesterday that their home was probably burned to the ground. Today, it appears that it's still standing. They're not sure. Is that relatable to many? Is that a conversation? And we're not going to go into his granddaughter, I think I said. Yes, 10-pound baby girl. Oh, no. He initially said Naomi, 31, gave birth to a 10-pound baby girl before wincing and saying baby boy. So it's actually a baby boy. My apologies. California Democrat Governor Gavin Newsom attended Biden's event after President-elect Donald Trump blamed Newsom for the crisis, citing the unavailability of water to firefighters. This whole story is about his grandson, right? I don't know. Biden made it very awkward. Granddaughter. So it turns out it was a granddaughter. Enough on that. That's not what the conversation is all about. But that is the leadership that we have at the highest level as president. We're going to talk more about this when we come back. Still playing a little catch up because we had a little bit of technical glitch this morning, so I'm glad that you joined us and stayed with us. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Also, we do have, I think, a couple New York State issues. We are going to get to some of the Trump transition team, and also some things here about Biden and his legacy. Yes, there is, and I know this has been a hot topic on the program as of late. There is talks about this purchase of Greenland. We'll mention it a little bit. There's also some updates on the Gulf of America, as it is now affectionately known. So stay with us. If you have any questions, I know I mentioned this earlier, but we do have Kelly Fitzpatrick, which we have talked about in the past on this program, but it's been a little while, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how her first year as chair of the Steuben County Legislature has been, because we know there's been some ups and downs at the legislative level in Steuben County. So we're going to be talking to her most likely tomorrow, but it may end up being Monday, and I'll keep you updated on that. But if you have any questions for her, I would love to hear from you. Because it has been a wild year in Steuben County. So get those questions to me at that number on the bottom of the screen. Thank you for everybody sending the waves, the Wyoming waves, of course, as well. And we're going to talk more about the wildfires in Los Angeles. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Isn't your wellness important? Don't you want more energy? Now's the best time to make every day better and relieve those achy muscles and pains than with the Hesselson's Hot Tub. Hesselson's has hot tubs in stock and available for immediate delivery with unbelievable savings. Hesselson's offers 0% interest-free financing for up to 5 full years. Hesselson's carries the only hot tub brand in the industry with the exclusive freshwater salt system that is eco-friendly and easy to use and only enhances your hot tubbing experience. Come in today and see why your next hot tub should be a Hesselson's hot tub. And remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
It's a new season of Sherry.
Having a good time has always been my number one goal. I tend to get crazy. At my age, I should not be jumping up and down like that. And if you don't know what I mean, ask your mama. The young ones, y'all like, we don't know what you're talking about. But I promise you, in 30 years, you will.
It's the best time in daytime.
Weekdays at 2 p.m. on Big Fox.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio on a hectic but fun, Frankly Speaking, this morning. Thank you to everybody joining us. Thank you for all the waves. We got a wife wave, this one says, so thank you. We'll add it to the list. Okay, I just have to mention this quickly before we get into the real seriousness of what is happening in L.A. And, you know, ABC's David Muir, he is being roasted, to use that term, online. He's being mocked, maybe is a better word, ridiculed. And the reason I bring this up is because we talk about the media so often, and I don't think I can stress or highlight enough the ego and the narcissism in the media. That's why so often they'll have stories talking about them, right? There's actually one today, and I don't know if I printed it out because... Yes, CNN, this is from AP News. CNN defamation trial comes at a rough time for legacy media and for the struggling network. It's very often about the media. It's very often about themselves. David Muir is being called pathetic and narcissistic for using clamps to cinch his flame-retardant jacket while broadcasting from the scene of the deadly Los Angeles wildfires. He was surveying the damage, and you'll see the clips of that on their promos for years to come. As you can see here behind me, he says, as he points to charred rubble behind his back. As he looks behind him, a wooden clamp is clearly visible on the back of his jacket. The clamp, which looks like a traditional clothing pin, tightens the ill-fitting ABC News branded jacket, showing off Muir's torso. Jack Osborne said, "Nice jacket, bro. Glad you look nice and svelte with those clothesline pegs while our city burns to the ground." Others described him as pathetic, narcissistic, and a litany of other insults we cannot repeat on the air. Now, Muir is no stranger to criticism. Conservatives blasted the anchor last summer for his moderating of the debate. which was clearly politically biased. But just to give you an idea of what you're dealing with the media. So let's talk about Gavin Newsom. Now, Gavin Newsom is being blamed specifically by President-elect Trump for not being prepared for these wildfires. And as a matter of fact, Trump has been talking about it, and in his defense, been talking about this for quite some time, about the need for water and the need for preparation for these wildfires. And then we learned that the LA mayor cut the budget by $17.6 million for firefighting to go to the fire department. Cut it $17.6 million and use that on homelessness spending, which is also a Gavin Newsom problem, and that money not being used. But Gavin Newsom decided to show real leadership by blaming the local folks when grilled over fire hydrants running out of water. And remember, this man wants to be the next president of the United States. Don't take my word for it. He was campaigning before it was cool. He was campaigning when many people thought that if Biden dropped out, he would be the one that was chosen. Of course, it ended up being Kamala Harris, and he may not want to. Some thought he may be picked for vice president, but I think he probably didn't want to be a part of that sinking ship. Newsom, in an interview with Anderson Cooper, said local officials need to figure out why the hydrants in Los Angeles ran dry. So that's also interesting. Is that a dig at Mayor Karen Bass as well? Karen Bass, of course, in Ghana at the time of the wildfires, and the wildfires continue, of course, and she is now back on American soil, but she was at the beginning of the wildfires, and we talked about her budget cuts. Look, the local folks are trying to figure that out, he told Cooper. So that is the man who wants to be your next president. Quote, I mean that when you have a system, but it's not dissimilar from what we've seen in other extraordinarily large-scale fires, whether it be pipe, electricity, or whether it just be the complete overwhelming of the system. I mean, those hydrants are typically for 2 or 3 fires, maybe 1 fire, and you have something of this scale. But again, that's going to be determined by the locals. All 3 of the 1 million-gallon water tanks that supply hydrants in Pacific Palisades were empty by 3 a.m. on Wednesday, according to the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. All 3 of the 1 million-gallon water tanks. That could be one of the reasons why the fires, as of last check, were at 0% contained. Fueled by the Santa Ana winds, the Palisades fire and 2 other massive blazes had devoured full neighborhoods, leaving thousands of homes, businesses, and schools in their paths. So Gavin Newsom, and this comes on the heels, by the way, of Trump criticizing him. So that's, you would think he'd be better prepared for an answer. So he blames the locals, and then Cooper asked Newsom to respond to Trump's criticism. He said, one can't even respond to it. People are literally fleeing. People lost their lives. Kids lost their schools. Families completely torn asunder. Churches burned down. This guy wanted to politicize it. I have a lot of thoughts. I know what I want to say. I won't. Not trying to politicize it. I mean, isn't that why you run for governor or why you run for mayor? To make the decisions to keep your residents safe and protected. So I don't see it as politicalization. I see it as stating the facts that unfortunately the media won't state, because they see Gavin Newsom as well as a rising star in the Democrat Party, one that could run for and most likely will be running for president in 2028. So not politicizing it, just highlighting the fact that others the facts that others won't. So he won't respond to Trump's comments, criticizing Trump in some way, but right before he blames local officials and not his own office. And in a way, kind of backstabbing LA Mayor Karen Bass. So there's another update. We've got other comments coming in, which we'll read after this break. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Name something with a diamond in it.
Diamondback rattlesnake.
It's in the name. Name a low-calorie food you might make your edible underwear out of.
Salmon.
Watch it weeknights. Share it the next day.
Wild caught Norwegian teriyaki.
Share in the fun. Weeknights on Family Feud.
7 and 7:30 on Big Fox.
And Missy face off in
Why can't we watch DuckTales? Because we don't learn anything.
Book Smarts versus Street Smarts.
Is it working? Are you feeling motivated? Very.
It's the Battle of Twins.
Life is so confusing. I always hoped it would be easier for me when I grew up. It's gonna be all right. You were faking. Bazinga.
Young Sheldon. Weeknights at 6:30 on Big Fox.
Welcome to Frankly Speaking, talking to the people that affect your life, that affect all of our day-to-day lives. This is something you're not going to get anywhere else. We've got a lot to offer. There'll be a lot of news, local, regional, national, really the things that affect you. And I think you'll be glad that you tuned in. So think of it as radio on TV. Frankly Speaking, live, 2 hours long, starting at 6 a.m. on WYDC TV Big Fox. This is History Man. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Thanks for joining us this morning. Look at all these waves coming in. Thank you so much. All right, comment from a viewer. The fire in Oops, should I put myself on camera? The fire in L.A. is terrible, and no water put it out is worse. But they might get a better mayor out of it. Well, that's someone looking at the silver lining. But one fact, you know what runs downhill? It all starts with the governor. I could not agree more. That's why when he has the audacity to blame local folks, and, you know, L.A. and specifically California in general, has had such an issue with homelessness and immigration, and he has taken opportunity after opportunity to criticize Trump and to really promote himself. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say, I would make a good president, or I'm doing a great job as governor. Now, he's not wording it exactly like that, but he can't keep promoting himself. But then when, you know what, hits the fan, you can't then blame it on the local folks. Again, quote, look, the local folks are trying to figure that out. Keep this in mind in 4 years, and even before that, when the primaries begin, that this man wants to run for president of the United States. So to that viewer's point, I couldn't agree more. It all starts with the governor. Yes, he passed the buck to the local officials, not what you would consider a great management style. Now, there's a really interesting piece by Jared Downing. And it kind of puts into perspective, and this is from the New York Post, and we'll probably get to this at the top of the hour. And then we're going to move on to some other issues. So I would love to hear your thoughts on this, but I do have a couple things here about Biden. Yes, I know you want to talk about Greenland. I know you want to talk about the Gulf of America, so we will talk about that as well. If we have an opportunity in the next hour, we may also talk about the Climate Change Super Fund. Assemblyman Phil Palmisano, who's going to be on the show next Friday, by the way. So next Friday, mark your calendar. Assemblyman Phil Palmisano is going to join us. The op-ed is about the Climate Change Superfund bill that Governor Hochul signed in, and we're going to be talking extensively with the Assemblyman about that next Friday. But I want to tell you a little bit about what his op-ed had to say. Everybody's waving this morning. All right. One other thing before we get into what led to this just destruction in California, because I don't want to miss this. We're talking about the importance of knowing who you voted for, right? And that's with whether we're bringing up Tiffany Henyard from Illinois, in this case, LA Mayor Karen Bass, who was out of the country. She was in Africa while the fires began and raged on, whether it's Gavin Newsom blaming the local people. It's important to know who you are voting for. And here is another example. Now, this is actually an official, but keep this in mind. These people, though not elected, these people are appointed. A longtime Massachusetts bureaucrat, going back to that, allegedly stole taxpayer money meant for senior citizens and spent the ill-gotten funds on his own music studio recording, loads of bourbon steak tips, a fancy portrait of himself, now there's an ego, and a Prius. Thomas Clasby, who was once the director of Quincy Department of Elder Services, was charged with embezzlement and other crimes for allegedly funneling tens of thousands of dollars in public funds into his own personal slush fund. Clasby, who was 60, allegedly used the city's purchasing mechanism to spend extravagantly on himself starting all the way back in 2019, roughly 20 years into his job as head of Elder Services. About $8,950 went into a music studio to produce recordings of his singing. Wow. Another $2,000 for his 153 pounds of bourbon steak tips. An additional $4,800 on a Toyota Prius. and $1,658 more for a signature framed portrait of himself, all on the taxpayer's dime. Now, this is not an example. You did not get to vote for this person, but this is the raw, as we mentioned yesterday, in government. Yesterday we had this conversation extensively about the bureaucrats, about the money, the wasted money. And then you look at someone, let's face it, California not known for being frugal. And then when it comes to something so important, so really matter of life or death as funding for the fire departments, and that's where they decide to finally, and you can't even say get fiscally responsible and cut. No, it's quite the opposite. They cut the budget to give to the homelessness problem, but that money was never spent on the homelessness problem. Can you follow? I don't know. So just in general, another example of the rot that is in the government. We have so much more to talk about. All right, I hope we can get to all of it this morning. I'm so glad that you joined us. Please weigh in on what you're seeing, what your thoughts are on the LA mayor. Again, we're mentioning this not to politicize it, because I know that's Newsom's argument. It's not to politicize it. No, it's actually to highlight what the mainstream media won't tell you, won't talk to you about. They won't tell you that LA Mayor Karen Bass was in Ghana. They won't talk about Gavin Newsom's failed leadership and blaming local officials. But you can get that information here on Frankly Speaking. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but we do have other issues to get to as well, so stay with us. Can't believe it. Hour number 1 is in the books. If you are new to the program, and it doesn't look like it looks like we have regulars because everybody knows to wave, but if you are new to the program, that's the number on the bottom of the screen. You can reach out at any time to comment on these topics or others. Sometimes people throw in topics not what we are talking about on the program. So feel free at any time to weigh in on the fires, on Biden, on Trump. Trump, of course, and I know you're not just joining us most likely, but if you are going after Gavin Newsom and thanking Joe Biden, saying there's no water in the fire hydrants, thanks, Joe Biden. So weigh in on that as well. And I know everybody wants to talk about it. What about the purchase of Greenland? Will you be calling it the Gulf of America from here on out? Your thoughts on Canada? All of that and much more, I would love to hear from you. So that is the best way to reach me, at that number on the bottom of the screen. Hour number 1, somehow already in the books. Now it's time to get ready, to prep, to be prepared for hour number 2. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back.
When you think boots, think Hesselsen's. Hesselsen's has the largest selection of work boots in the area. Composite and steel-toe boots, Met-Guard boots, soft-toe boots, and hikers, duty and western boots, all in one location. Hesselsen's, Amara Heights. Hesselsen's has men's and ladies' boots in all sizes and widths. Choose from the largest names in the industry: Danner, Carolina, Timberland Pro, Keen Utility, Thorogood, Area, and Georgia, to name just a few. Hesselsen's has been locally owned and operated since 1955, so when you think local service and great selection, think Hesselsen's. Remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hesselsen's.
Hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I am your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselsen studio. Thank you to everybody joining us this morning on the program. We're going to wrap up our discussion here on the fires in LA, but feel free to continue that conversation at the number on the bottom of the screen. I would love to hear your opinion. We are bringing up the facts specifically of the $17.6 million budget cut by Mayor Bass, and also we've been talking about Gavin Newsom blaming others. Well, and specifically the local officials. Well, Jared Downing says as Los Angeles firefighters faced down the most destructive blaze in the city's history, they ran out of water. One firefighter yelling, "The hydrants are down. Water supply just dropped." Fire crews were forced to watch as entire blocks of the Pacific Palisades, one of the most scenic and celeb-packed neighborhoods in LA, were incinerated in a matter of hours late Tuesday and into early Wednesday. "There's no water in the fire hydrant," said Rick Caruso, who we heard from earlier. "The firefighters are there and there's nothing they can do. They've got neighborhoods burning, homes burning, and businesses burning. It should have never happened." And the photos are just heartbreaking. The water shortage was a result of years of mismanagement of LA's water system, including a federal indictment of a leader and a high-profile resignation, as well as major operational problems that drained reserves too quickly. The Pacific Palisades fire, whipped up by hurricane-force Santa Ana winds, destroyed more than 1,000 homes and businesses. By Wednesday night, it had spread to 16,000 acres, bigger than the island of Manhattan in New York, and crews had not managed to contain any of it. LA residents voiced their outrage. We've brought to you some of those voices. And then adding insult to injury, Democrat Mayor Karen Bass was 7,400 miles away in Africa, and months earlier she had approved an $18 million cut to the fire department. So you see many residents weighing in. And then when she was asked about it by a reporter when she returned to America, she stood there stone-faced and would not respond to residents of her city. A legacy of terrible fire management by the state of California and Governor Gavin Newsom also hangs over the smoky skies of LA. LA's water system supply could not handle the demand of the multiple blazes. And that's what specifically President-elect Donald Trump criticized. The city has 114 massive water tanks that store water for and help ensure consistent flow. All were full when the fire started on Tuesday. All were drained by 3 a.m. Wednesday. Without the water tanks, the city system was simply not able to maintain pressure to the hydrants. And this was not just in the city of LA. Malcolm Stewart, who lives near Pasadena, had not seen a single fire truck on his street as he watched the Eaton fire, a huge blaze east of Los Angeles, swallow his neighbors' houses one by one, creeping closer to his childhood home. And he does a good job here highlighting the Jared Downing specific instances and talking with people on the street. In LA, the fail-safes should have been working. The hydrants should have stayed full, and a water shortage on this scale should never have happened, said Caruso, a former utility commission head and candidate for LA mayor. The failure of LA's water system comes after years of criticism from President-elect Donald Trump and others that California's leaders are not managing their water or their fire risk properly. So when Gavin Newsom says that Trump is politicizing this, what he's hoping that that will do is take away the fact or erase the fact and make sure the media doesn't bring up the fact that Trump has been talking about this for years, about the mismanagement of water and also the fire risk. Trump pinned blame for the water shortage specifically on Newsom, who derailed a 2020 Trump administration order redirecting water from the north of the state to parched Southern California. And as we've seen in numerous instances, that was all done for political reasons because they didn't like Trump. The same goes with why we've had open and porous borders, and what that has caused for this country is because Biden wanted to use executive orders to erase what Trump did on day one. So all of these things came to the detriment of the people they're supposed to be in office for, their constituents, all because they didn't like Trump. Newsom's excuse at the time was a tiny endangered fish that had already, this is an important point, that had already been declared functionally extinct. Trump has also slammed Newsom for a failure to clean up underbrush and dead trees that can fuel forest fires, though it's not clear whether that was a factor in these latest blazes. He posted back in 2019, this again, President-elect Trump, he posted in 2019, "I told him from the first day we met that he must clean his forest floors regardless of what his bosses, the environmentalists, demand of him. Must also do burns and cut fire stoppers." Trump was referring to measures such as prescribed burns and fuel breaks or fire breaks, which help keep wildfires from spreading. Newsom has bragged about his forestry accomplishments, but a 2021 investigation by Cap Radio and NPR's California newsroom found that he overstated the number of acres treated with fuel breaks and prescribed burns by a whopping, this is how much he exaggerated, by 690%. This is a man that wants to be your president. This is a man who will say and do anything to be president in this lust for power until he gets that power and it does not prove to be popular, his decisions. So what does he do? He blames Trump for politicizing it, and he blames local officials for the failures. But LA's utility system has its own massive institutional problems as well. Bass, who has touted her DEI appointments, and that was Megyn Kelly's argument, that they were focused more on DEI initiatives than they were on the safety of their residents, ousted Cynthia Ruiz, the department's first ever Native American commissioner, after less than a year of service. Two out of the last three general managers of the utility have resigned in disgrace. One allegedly mismanaged $40 million in funding. Another, David Wright, was sentenced to 6 years in prison for taking bribes. Most of the public backlash, however, has centered on Bass, who rushed home from attending the inauguration of Ghana's new president when the blaze broke out Tuesday night. She was overseas despite warnings about the Santa Ana winds days earlier. Well, she wanted to take that taxpayer-funded trip. She wanted to go to Ghana. She wanted to go to Africa on the taxpayer's dime, and was hoping that nothing would happen in this case. In addition to Bass, the city's fire chief, Kristen Crowley, the first woman in that role, is also taking heat. Megyn Kelly blaming Crowley for putting virtue signaling and woke branding above doing her job. In recent years, LA's fire chief has made not filling the fire hydrants top priority, but diversity. Now, we're going to kind of wrap up this discussion on that, though, as I mentioned, we could continue having the conversation, but I want to move on to Biden, Trump, some other issues as well. Stay with us. I see a lot of comments coming in, so stay with us. We got to take our first short break, and then we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us.
Are you or someone you love at risk of falling in the home? Did you know 80% of home falls happen in the bathroom? If you are still stepping over a tub to take a shower, please call Bath Planet for a free design service. Our certified design team will take all the measurements and work with you to design a bathroom that never has to sacrifice style for safety. Go with the company that people trust. Bath Planet, 2 locations serving the entirety of the Twin Tiers. Call today.
It's all types to play Family Feud, the blunt mama.
If you knew Steve Harvey was at your door, you'd answer it wearing what?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Weeknights at 7 and 7:30 on Big Fox.
Welcome to Frankly Speaking, talking to the people that affect your life, that affect all of our day-to-day lives. This is something you're not going to get anywhere else. We've got a lot to offer. There'll be a lot of news, local, regional, national, really the things that affect you. And I think you'll be glad that you tuned in. So think of it as radio on TV. Frankly Speaking, live, 2 hours long, starting at 6 a.m. on WYDC TV Big Fox. This is history making. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Thank you so much for joining us as we broadcast live from the Hesselson's studio. I'm your host, Frank Acom. A couple comments to get to this morning. First off, good morning, Frank. Well, hey, good morning. I may have missed it. What was the source of the fire? Fires do not start themselves. No one is reporting this. Well, you're right. No one is reporting it. I've not heard it anywhere, but just so you know, Bernie Sanders has the reason. yes, the reason is none other than global warming. So there is your answer. If you want to accept it. Yes, that's what, of course, Bernie Sanders, and you'll see a lot of people try to jump on this and blame it on global warming. But no, to your point, that's a good point. I have not seen any indication where this has started. I'm sure we'll hear about that in the coming days. And if I hear anything, I will pass it along. So thank you for that. Another comment. Here's a thought. Trump could be saying things like acquiring countries to separate himself from Musk, as people are calling Musk president. Interesting. I hadn't really thought about that, but you do raise a good point. I don't think that's getting to Trump as much as they were hoping it would. For a while, all the Democrat politicians, I think in this case it was the Democrat politicians started it, not the media. The Democrats started it, and then the media jumped on it to try to kind of rib President-elect Trump, because, and I'm not telling tales out of school. We know this. Trump has even joked about it. When Robert F. Kennedy was on stage with him and the crowd kept yelling Bobby and going crazy, he goes, boy, he's popular. Don't get too popular, Bobby. Meaning Trump doesn't want anyone around him that is going to take the spotlight from him in any way, or not the complete spotlight away from him. So that's what they were trying to do with the whole Musk being president, because they were hoping that that would mean that he would, distance himself from Musk or go on Truth Social and badmouth Musk or whatever the case may be. So far, that hasn't seemed to work, and that talk has died down a little bit, as Musk has been still very much in the limelight, but not as much in the last week or so. But I think you do raise a good point, though I don't think in this instance it's bothering Trump that much, because it is creating with the Doge committee, creating kind of an aura of hitting the ground running, and not just an aura, actually doing it, hitting the ground running and putting America first and the Make America Great Again initiative. Okay, another comment from a different viewer. Just a general comment, regarding the outgoing administration and their comrades at all levels of government. It is clear that Democrats are only concerned with their re-election prospects and are not concerned with the well-being of Americans, given that they are clearly trying to sabotage President Trump's administration and are otherwise wasting time pointing fingers without action. You raise a very good point. Thank you, viewer. We've seen this specifically with President Biden. And I keep using this term because I just can't think of anything better, but trying to gum up the works for Trump to make it more difficult for him to be successful. And if you recall, Donald Trump Jr. said, while it looked like World War III was about to break out, saying that Biden is doing everything that he can to make it so his father can't bring back peace and prosperity. And unfortunately, we are seeing that. And it goes in with these fires that we've been talking about all morning long, where Gavin Newsom, who wants to, you mentioned re-election prospects, he wants to be elected for president. So he's going a step further. He's saying that Trump is politicizing this, when Trump's been essentially begging for years that Gavin Newsom do something about this fire risk, to do something about water management. It's not politicizing it. It's telling the truth. It's telling the facts that the media will not bring to you if they don't have to, because they see Gavin Newsom. Remember, that's their team, the Democrats. So they see Gavin Newsom very much as the front runner in the presidential election. Many wanted him to run not primary Biden, but they were hoping that Biden maybe step down. There would be a primary, and Gavin Newsom, and probably would have been the nominee. But instead they decided, hey, we don't want our party to vote. We're just going to pick who we have to put in there. But yes, they are. It's not about the betterment of the citizens, as is clear with Mayor Bass cutting $17.6 million in the fire department, and then not spending the money in the way it was supposed to go, which is the homeless population, which the homeless population is also something to keep in mind when we talk about Gavin Newsom, because that's very much his problem. But yeah, so that wasn't done. And just like Megyn Kelly said, they were more worried about DEI initiatives. That wasn't about the betterment of their constituents. And look at Gavin Newsom blaming the local officials. Blaming, not taking, the buck stops here. No, not in Gavin Newsom's case. It was to blame, I don't know, the local town council person. But this goes in with that viewer who mentioned the Biden administration and trying to really sabotage, I do like that term, sabotage Trump's administration. The New York Post editorial board had a very interesting piece on Joe Biden, and then we'll talk about the Gulf of America and some other issues. But President Biden has long maintained the delusion that history will see him as a great leader, and he's clinging on that to the bitter end. Do you agree that, listen, if you hear Chuck Schumer ignoring the fact, when asked about why they covered up his mental decline. He said they didn't, and then went on to call him a patriot, a great American, et cetera, et cetera. Nancy Pelosi saying that he should be on Mount Rushmore at one point, many comparing him to George Washington. Do you think that legacy sticks, even though now the same people that ousted him, are now blaming him as well for not getting out early enough? But I do think he has this ego. Look, yesterday when talking about the wildfires, he starts it by saying the good news is he's now a great-grandfather. Still not sure if it's a boy or a girl. I should have done research during the break. But then saying, but in good news, his son, Hunter, I guess that must be who it is. No, it can't be Hunter. Could it be? Maybe. I don't know. His son is all he said. His son having that child, they thought that they had lost their house, but it turns out they may not have. So that's the good news. So making it all about himself, making it all about his ego. And that's what this has really been from the beginning. In an exit interview with Susan Page, I'm not sure if you saw this. This was in USA Today. Biden reviewed the last 4 years with nonstop nonsense. He also said he wasn't sure. They asked him, do you think you could have been president for 4 more years? And he's like, who knows? I'm fine right now, but who knows? He blamed his failing faculties, the White House bubble, his lifelong pretensions to be more than an extremely lucky hack politician delusions. He had all 3 in this interview. He again claimed he could have beaten Donald Trump in the last election had his own party not elbowed him out. He continues to have that belief, and we said this on this program way before it became popular to say. We said that he believes he is the only person that can defeat Donald Trump. So if Harris, who ultimately couldn't defeat Trump, he still has that as his legacy, and he thinks that will hold. Now we see the Democrats try to blame him for not getting out early enough. But if you're Biden, you say, I could have beat him. So he did nothing wrong. It's a see, I told you so. You should have kept me in. And he says the polling showed it. Now, keep in mind, he was only, what is being reported anyway, anonymous sources, that he was only told the good news. There was certain information that was not to be brought to his attention. So if you're surrounded by yes men, and he still believes these yes men, if he was surrounded by yes men who kept telling him, you can win, you're the only one that can win, you're still very mentally healthy, you're sharp as a tack, you're great. Why wouldn't he think he could have beat Trump? He did it once. Why couldn't he? The survey that showed his chances tanking following the June debate, apparently they didn't show that to Biden. The ones that revealed only 24% of Americans considered him mentally sharp. Maybe he was deceived by someone he trusted. Maybe he deceived himself. Maybe he just decided to forget the facts. We're within throwing distance of President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration after he delivered a historic whooping to Democrats and Biden has not let a single ray of reality slip through the cracks of the self-flattering myth he's built for himself. Biden wouldn't have won in a showdown against Trump. In reality, by staying in, he likely could have cost Democrats dozens of more seats in Congress. Democrat leaders knew this. Democrat voters knew this. Everyone, it seems, knew this, but Biden, I would also say probably Dr. Jill didn't, and Hunter as well. But his self-delusion goes deeper. Asked what will endure about his legacy, and I'll ask you the question, what part of Biden's legacy do you think will endure? Joe Semplinsky, the former congressman, now assemblyman-elect, we played that clip for you yesterday of him getting sworn into the assembly, but he believes the thing that will be studied most about the Biden administration decades from now will be his pardon of Hunter Biden. I think that's a very good point that the former congressman makes. But asking Biden what he believes will endure about his legacy, he responded, I hope that history says that I came in and I had a plan how to restore the economy and reestablish Americans' leadership in the world. And I hope it records that I did it with honesty and integrity. Well, you didn't do either. You didn't restore the economy. And you certainly, I don't know anybody looking at it coming from the piece of the Trump administration could look at reestablishing America's leadership in the world. I mean, there was talks at some point that we might be entering World War III. Any history book that says that will belong in the fiction section, says the New York Post editorial board. Biden's plans slam the economy and slowing jobs and wage growth and fueling record inflation with a one mega spend stimulus bill after another. But also mentioning that inflation, you think of the Inflation Reduction Act and all these ways he just spent so much money that causes inflation, why you can't afford your groceries, why you can't afford to pay your bills. All that fueled by Biden. But yet I saw a piece, and I think don't quote me, I think it was CNBC, that it said inflation concerns, something to that extent. So I clicked on it, and experts are concerned that Trump's policies will increase inflation. I thought that is the media not learning their lesson, not doing the soul searching after November, because that's, number one, an article you would never see for Biden or any Democrat politician, even though his, as they said here, mega spend stimulus bills, even the layman knew that would increase inflation, knew that would spur inflation. So the media not having learned their lesson, but continuing. His weakness inspired Russia to invade Ukraine and Iran to send his pawns against Israel. Yes, that weakness through the disastrous, tragic Afghanistan withdrawal. He allowed China to test our weak spots with surveillance balloons, hackers, and spies. He horribly compromised America's standing on the world stage. His legacy will be leaving his party, his country, and the world worse off than he found them. I'm asking you what you believe will endure about his legacy, but I thought that was a powerful statement coming from the Post editorial board. His legacy will be leaving his party, his country, and the world worse off than he found them. As for honesty and integrity, I don't think he threw that by the wayside by spending his entire presidency hiding his fast deteriorating mental state from the public and lying about the border being secure. Not to mention going back on his promise not to pardon influence peddling, tax dodging son Hunter on his way out the door. So yeah, this idea of honesty and integrity, and they're exactly right. I think the hiding his mental decline is arguably the worst scandal in presidential history, one that you would hope there'd be history books on, but I don't believe, unfortunately, there will be to the extent that there should be. Biden's told many fibs over his political career, but possibly none have been more far-fetched than the one he's told himself, that he was a good president. The voters were wrong, the polls were wrong, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and Barack Obama were wrong. In Biden's mind, he wasn't appreciated in his time, but history will see him as the second coming of FDR. He's bought that fantasy, hook, line, and sinker. As the sun sets on his term as president, it seems he's the only one who did. I thought that was an important message, an important piece by the New York Post, and it led to the question that I'm asking you this morning. What do you think will endure on Biden's legacy? I see some comments coming in. I see some more waves. Wow, you guys are busy this morning. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Please, stay with us.
At John G. Ullman & Associates, our clients come first. As a fiduciary, we build personalized plans rooted in our shared ethics and values.
And you've been doing this for 45 years?
Yes, our in-house team creates custom plans built for you and your family.
We like the idea of a relationship that lasts.
That's what we're all about, helping you and your family build and protect wealth for generations. John G. Ullman & Associates, here for everything your money touches.
Most recommend daily walks because of the many health benefits associated with walking. But how do you get healthy circulation boosting activity without leaving your chair? With Legzercise Pro, the natural circulation booster that uses continuous automatic leg movement to soothe pain and promote healthy circulation the natural drug-free way. Soothe pain and calm restless legs. Reduce swelling in your legs, ankles, and feet and stimulate healthy circulation. Stay active with Legzercise Pro.
I'm Nancy O'Dell. This is Crime Expose.
It's chilling, taunting.
We knew exactly who it was.
Blood stains on her shorts.
See you in September.
The Fox website is here now. WYDCTV.com. Local and national news that keeps you informed and involved. WYDCTV.com. Today's weather, up to date and in your town. WYDCTV.com. Sports news, local events, and health stories that affect you. WYDCTV.com. The Big Fox website. Your news here now. WYDCTV.com.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. I've got to say, we must have the most well-informed, articulate, intelligent viewers of any program on TV. Let's get to some of these comments. Great comments. First of all, Ken. Hey, Ken. Most of California's problems, and quite honestly, most of America's problems, could be fixed by one simple measure. Trump could encourage the newly enlightened social media to fact-check the legacy media. Most people seem to be getting their news on social media, and if the sheeple were to hear the truth on most subjects, they would soundly reject the Democrats' philosophy. Yes, there's a piece, Ken, I know that you would find it funny as well, from the AP News. CNN defamation trial comes at a rough time for legacy media and for the struggling network. Well, if it is a rough time, it's for the reason that they brought it on themselves. The bias became too much, and look, they went half the population and told them they were garbage, Harris was the best, et cetera, et cetera. Their business model's not working. Next up, comment from another viewer. Another great comment. I hear a lot of comments on your show about America first cut inflation. And that the idea was, what this viewer is referencing yesterday on the program was, hey, get our state, our country, I should say, the states in the United States, get them back on track, Trump, and then worry about Greenland, then worry about the Panama Canal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We need to focus on America first, which arguably makes sense because that was the name of his policy. But this viewer says, isn't taking over the Panama Canal going to put a lot of money back in the U.S. as we pay dearly to go through a place we built? That's a very good point. That is a very, very good point. And also the security aspects to it, as China, according to President-elect Trump, China has really taken over the Panama Canal. And with Greenland, we heard about all of the benefits and the pros that would come with owning Greenland. That came up yesterday on the program. So you raise a really good point. Next up, comment from a different viewer. Another great comment. Good morning, Frank. Well, hey, good morning. I heard an LA local say yesterday that many of the fires start due to their outdated electrical infrastructure. The high winds knock over very old power poles, which spark the blazes. Okay. What's ironic in all of this is that California wants to be the leader in clean air and eliminate cancer-causing chemicals, while the toxins from one home fire erase years of, quote, saving the planet. Terrible management and very sad for our nation. I couldn't agree more. This is the idea of always virtue signaling, always wanting to be the first, the most, PC, for lack of a better word, woke, I know is now the new way of saying it, the most woke. It causes unintended consequences, as we saw with LA Governor Karen Bass, who was, according to Megyn Kelly, more focused on DEI initiatives than keeping her residents safe, as she was in Africa as well during this. But again, how much media coverage will go to Gavin Newsom, who now is blaming local officials? Yes, it is mismanagement, terrible management at its finest. But unfortunately, they probably won't pay any kind of consequence, maybe from the voters, but not real consequences in the long term, because the media wants to see Gavin Newsom run for president. And at the end of the day, Karen Bass is still on their team, still Democrat. You got to protect them. That's another reason, to Ken's point, about the legacy media. That's why it is a very bad time, according to the AP News, for legacy media. Yes, the mainstream media has not learned that pushing this bias no longer pays. So I do think if the American people could see the truth in these stories, and if they were fair and balanced articles, yes, I would agree they would throw away the policies and the politicians that the media have been pushing. All right, let's talk. I know you want to talk about Greenland. You want to talk about all that. Well, did you see the Mexican president, who does not like Trump, suggesting what should the name of the United States be if we're going to change the name of the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America? Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum slapped back Wednesday at President-elect Donald Trump's threat to rename the Gulf of Mexico. I guess she pulled out a 1607 map with the Gulf of Mexico being identified as such and North America being labeled as Mexican American or Mexican America. So she said, in trying to score political points, she says, why don't we call it Mexican America? It sounds nice, no? Asked the Mexican leader. With all due respect, she said that Trump was wrong to state the violent drug cartels are running Mexico rather than the people. Yeah, if I were her, I might have stayed out of this fight, because it's not really a fight. It was kind of a fun conversation. I know she's trying to get some political points and get some people laughing. I'm not sure with this new administration coming in, the Trump administration, that you want to be poking the bear in some ways. So that was her response. You want to call it Gulf of America? Well, we're going to call it Mexican America. Okay. Now, Blinken, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, said that the U.S., quote, is not going to ever acquire Greenland, and added that even discussing the prospect, as President-elect Donald Trump has repeatedly done, is a, quote, waste of time. Well, if there's someone I think we can all trust, it's Antony Blinken, that powerhouse of genius. When you hear this, you know, as someone that was thinking, you know, like many on this program, that many people commenting and saying, hey, let's focus on America first, then maybe look at Greenland, then maybe look at, you know, Panama Canal, et cetera, et cetera. When you see Blinken say this in such a cocky way and an arrogant way, doesn't it make you say, yeah, let's get Greenland. Let's take Greenland. The idea expressed about Greenland is obviously not a good one. Oh, it is? That's obviously? Huh. But maybe more importantly, it's obviously one that's not going to happen. So we probably shouldn't waste a lot of time talking about it. Well, I would ask the question, why is that not a good idea then, Mr. Secretary of State? Maybe give some specifics there. I guess leaving it at that. Blinken said, I think one of the basic propositions we've brought into work over the last 4 years is that we're stronger, we're more effective, and we get better results when we're working closely with our allies, not saying or doing things that may alienate them. How dare Blinken suggest that they have a better track record when it comes to international affairs or working with our allies in the Trump administration? The Trump administration was 4 years of peace and prosperity. So to suggest that they have a better track record is worse than laughable. Laughable is not a strong enough word. So if you were wondering about Greenland and Blinken is someone that you trust, it's not only not a good idea, it's not ever going to happen. Just like Trump, and how many videos have we seen in the past? Just like in the past, Trump's never going to be elected. Mark my word, Trump will never be elected. It feels similar to that. Now, Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader, House Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries, signaled that Democrats can be expected to form ranks against President-elect Trump's vision of the new U.S. imperialism. That's coming from Axios. So when I use the term imperialism, just keep in mind this is a far-left outlet. It's why they've had to lay off so many employees. Should Trump's musings morph into a serious push to expand the nation's borders, opposition from Democrats could make it difficult to get the kind of congressional approval he would need. Now, Trump did decline to rule out using military force to seize the Panama Canal in Greenland. Keep that in mind. The leaders of Denmark, Greenland, and Panama have pushed back forcefully against the idea of willingly giving up territory to the U.S. Jeffrey said at a press conference, House Democrats believe that we are not sent to Washington to invade Greenland, rename the Gulf of Mexico, or seize the Panama Canal by force. Jeffrey said Washington should focus on the issues that matter to the American people. Housing costs are too high, grocery costs are too high, insurance costs are too high, utility costs are too high. That can't be the case, Mr. Jeffries. I mean, with all due respect, we were told before November 5th that housing costs weren't too high, that grocery costs weren't too high, insurance costs weren't too high, and utility costs weren't too high. Well, maybe insurance costs. Maybe they did say they were too high. So what changed? Because we were told all of last year that there was no inflation. And as a matter of fact, if you said that your bills were too high, that your grocery bills were too high, that your housing costs were too high, your utility costs were too high, Mr. Jeffries' party and the media would mock and ridicule you. As a matter of fact, even after the election, if you recall, I think it was the DNC, but it might have been some offshoot of the DNC, but it was a major Democrat group laughing at you when they posted a chart showing that costs were better. And they said, oh, but you couldn't afford eggs, right? Mocking and ridiculing you because you couldn't afford eggs. But according to their bureaucrats, according to the studies that their bureaucrats got overpaid to put together, the economy was doing just fine. So never mind that you went hungry last night. Never mind that you have bills stacking up that you haven't been able to pay and or you're delaying paying. Their statistic in page 38 of this manual created by a bureaucrat that's overpaid that's the true number. Never mind what you're feeling, experiencing, believe what they have to say. So for now, for Hakeem Jeffries, and put aside I know this is a conversation about Greenland and about Panama, but for now, Jeffries to focus on what they refused to focus on during the election. As a matter of fact, not just refusing to focus on, mocking you if you brought it up, was that, and I quote, focus on the issues that matter to the American people. Housing costs are too high, grocery costs are too high, insurance costs are too high, utility costs are too high. Will Mr. Jeffries and others who have been saying the opposite for over a year, will they apologize to those of us who said those exact things and were attacked for it? I think that's a fair question. So that's kind of your quick updates. I really dig that people are liking talking about these topics, about Greenland, about Panama. Canada, again, that was always kind of more of a joke, but still, some people like to have that conversation. So if you want to talk about Canada as well, why not? And will you be calling it the Gulf of America? I'm going to try to, as much as I can remember, but then again, the Gulf of Mexico doesn't come up in daily conversation with me all that often. We'll read your comments when we come back. We're running just a tad bit late, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Are you over 50? Would you like to get up to 33% more income in retirement? Then call now for this free book, Annuity Do's and Don'ts for Baby Boomers. This free book reveals little-known secrets about annuity strategies that will help you make the right choices before buying an annuity. Call right now for your free book, and as a bonus, we'll also throw in a free annuity rate report. Both absolutely free for calling Annuity General today.
Call 800-354-5972.
Welcome to Frankly Speaking, talking to the people that affect your life, that affect all of our day-to-day lives. This is something you're not going to get anywhere else. We've got a lot to offer. There'll be a lot of news, local, regional, national, really the things that affect you. And I think you'll be glad that you tuned in. So think of it as radio on TV. Frankly Speaking, live, 2 hours long, starting at 6 a.m. on WYDC TV Big Fox. This is history making.
Fox website is here now. WYDCTV.com. Local and national news that keeps you informed and involved. WYDCTV.com. Today's weather up to date and in your town. WYDCTV.com. Sports news, local events, and health stories that affect you. WYDCTV.com. The Big Fox website. Your news here now. WYDCTV.com.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Give them a call today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking, as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street Corner. We got great conversations going this morning. Let's go to some viewer comments. Come on, Frank, you know you can't point out the obvious to a Democrat. They have no defense for what is actual facts. All they have to do is sit there and try and divert everybody's attention away from what the actual truth is. That's been their game plan for decades now. And a prime example of that would be Gavin Newsom blaming local officials and then saying Trump is trying to politicize the fires. Not at all. He's trying to get the word out that the media does not want to give to the American people. So you're right. Never mind what's going on over here. Pay attention over here. How about this from a viewer? Can't afford eggs? Heck, who can afford the price of stamps? That's a good point, too. And by the way, public service announcement, speaking of stamps, today is a national day of mourning, so you will not be getting mail today. Today is the day that Joe Biden set aside to honor the legacy of Jimmy Carter, which actually we may talk about next. But today is the national day of honor, so for Jimmy Carter, of mourning, I should say, so there will not be any mail. Comment from a different viewer. It's sad how many people think Trump talks of Greenland and the Panama Canal, that it's crazy talk, because they have no idea the geopolitical situation with China and that and what you're doing around the world to take over things because the media doesn't cover it. That you're exactly right. And that's what Trump said at the press conference at Mar-a-Lago, that the talk of Greenland is to send, and I can't remember the exact term that he used, but to send a clear message to China. Same with Panama, because he said that Panama is being controlled by China. Now the Panama Canal, that is. Panama has denied that. But yeah, this is all geopolitical, and the media doesn't cover it, doesn't focus on the real, and we've covered it a lot here extensively, as a matter of fact, on this program, about the real threat from China, Russia, and Iran. China wants to be the world's superpower, and that's why we've seen the spying, whether it's through balloons, whether it's through hacking. That's why we've seen them continue to poke at us to see how far they can go, how much information they can get. For heaven's sakes, we talked about it, but the media's stopped talking about it. An alleged Chinese agent infiltrated New York State government, for heaven's sake. So we know that that's a much larger issue. So you're right. Trump recognizes, thank heavens, that threat. So many politicians bury their heads in the sand when it comes to the threat of China because, unfortunately, there's a lot of money to be made. That's a huge market, obviously. That's why you'll see Disney programs and movies edited because at the demands of the Chinese government, because they don't want to lose that money, to lose that window into that economy. So yes, you raise a very good point. It is very sad that people don't know more. I know when it comes to international affairs, let's face it, some people don't even follow domestic affairs. Couldn't tell you who their congressman or senator is, etc., unfortunately. But they're definitely not following international affairs. And you raise a great point that it's all about the geopolitical situation with China. And Donald Trump made that clear. Now, I did mention that today is a National Day of Mourning for Jimmy Carter. President-elect Donald Trump emerged from a marathon 100-minute huddle with Senate Republicans touting what he called a very strong discussion of how to implement his agenda. This is after he paid his respect to the late Jimmy Carter just feet away at the Capitol. I know they attended an event, him and Melania and others. It was a really good meeting, very strong, said Trump. We'll get something done. 1 bill, 2 bill, doesn't matter to me. They're going to work that out. But at the end of the day, it will be the same. Now, this visit marks the first time Trump has set foot in the U.S. Capitol since he departed the White House in 2021. Though he went back to Washington for a visit with President Biden on November 13th and for a meeting with the Republicans this past June. Quote, "It feels great. It couldn't feel better," a beaming Trump said while being joined by Melania. Well, she's got to be happy. What'd they say? Amazon's paying $40 million for that documentary on her life. Good for her. Remember when, every Democrat first lady always is on the front of Vanity Fair and on Cosmo and these type of things. Melania, who was a former model, never got that same respect. But Trump said, we're going to get the results and we're going to make America great again. Hey, thanks for the wait. The first couple then proceeded to the Capitol Rotunda, pausing solemnly for about a minute in front of the 39th president's casket. Carter, whom Trump fiercely admonished in the past, but recently praised for having, quote, done everything in his power to improve the lives of all Americans. We know Carter passed away on December 29th. He was 100 years old. Senate Republicans on Wednesday erupted in applause as the once and future commander-in-chief joined them to begin deliberations about his second administration agenda. Trump has telegraphed that his preference is for congressional Republicans to pass one big, beautiful bill to kick off his term with a focus on cracking down on illegal immigration into the U.S. and clawing back unspent funds authorized by his predecessor for an array of renewable energy programs. Following the meeting, senators indicated that a lot of the details about the legislation and the procedural tactics lawmakers will take were left undecided. Shelley Moore Capito from West Virginia said no decisions were made. The president was listening very intently. Looming large over the gathering of Republican senators were the colleagues in the House of Representatives who have notoriously struggled at times to move significant pieces of legislation. John Cornyn saying it was a unity message. From my standpoint, the question is, what can the House pass? I don't think it's more complicated than that, and we really hope, and I'm glad Speaker Johnson was given another chance as Speaker, because maybe that signals that there'll be more unity in the House, but we don't need this kind of infighting by Republicans if they are going to implement the Trump agenda. Initial legislation also is expected to include an extension of lower personal income tax rates that were adopted in 2017, with the possible inclusion of Trump's campaign trail pledges to abolish taxes on tips, overtime, and Social Security benefits. Quote, we have a lot of money that we're going to be clawing back from the Green New Scam, he said. The border is going to be secure. We're going to start it immediately. We had the best border we've ever had, and we'll have the best border we've ever had times 2. I would prefer 1, but I'll do whatever needs to be done to get it passed, meaning 1 bill. John Thune prefers the 2-bill approach, with the first package handling border and energy policy priorities and the second on spending on the Trump tax cuts. So that, I know that's a roundabout way of mentioning Jimmy Carter, but Ted Cruz said by far the best chance of success is taking up 2 bills, but adding the failure is not an option. And we've already seen some people trying to be a fly in the ointment, but we'll see how this all plays out as we near Inauguration Day. Again, I know I keep asking this question. Anybody out in the audience planning on attending? I'd love to hear from you so we can get some pictures from you and put them on the show and maybe have a little chat as well. And I've done this in the past during this time frame. I mean, obviously you're not going to be sitting out in the cold field, but you'll be traveling on your way. Would love to hear from you. But we got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, please stay with us.
I'm Marianne Crawford. I've lived here for 70 years, but I do fine right here in my house, and I want to be here as long as I can be. And I feel comfortable knowing that if something happened to me, someone would know because of the cameras that are installed in various spots in my home. That has been a wonderful gift to me to be able to have that security and that support from Full Circle America, and that's what it's all about.
Are you 50? Would you like to get up to 33% more income in retirement? Then call now for this free book, Annuity Do's and Don'ts for Baby Boomers. This free book reveals little-known secrets about annuity strategies that will help you make the right choices before buying an annuity. Call right now for your free book, and as a bonus, we'll also throw in a free annuity rate report. Both absolutely free for calling Annuity General today.
Call 800-354-5972.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson's studio here on Market Street in Corning. As a reminder, tomorrow on the program during the Steuben Senior Services Fund section, we'll be talking with Christine Towner, telling us about the Senior Companion Program. Also, we will be talking with Kelly Fitzpatrick. She's the chair of the Steuben County Legislature. We'll be talking with her most likely on tomorrow's program. Got to find something out with her. It may be Monday. I will keep you updated. But if you have any questions for Kelly Fitzpatrick, it's been a while since she's been on the program. That's on me, not on her. So I really look forward to hearing how her first year went as chair, finding out what can be done in the future for Steuben, what needs to be fixed, what's going great, those type of things. Kind of a recap on her first year in office as chair of the Steuben County Legislature. Look forward to talking with her tomorrow, so make sure you get your questions in. A couple comments from viewers. Ken from Horseheads writes, I'm kind of loving the idea of America acquiring Greenland. People seem to have fun with this conversation. I'm leaning towards you, Ken. I agree. I kind of like the idea. Ken continues, it's a beautiful country, a little cooler than the U.S., but still comfortable with a jacket. Good. Trump could rename it Woke America, and it could be a sanctuary and safe place for the Democrats that want to leave Common Sense America, now that Trump is making America great again. Now, of course, Common Sense America would have to retain the mineral rights and strategic military locations, but the Dems could do what they want with the rest of the country. There you go, Ken. Very thought-provoking this morning. Thank you, Ken. Taking the initiative to already figure out what to do with Greenland. I like it. Next up, comment from a different viewer. America first. Let's sit back, enjoy the ride. Trump can multitask, especially with his new team. So I don't think we have too many worries. I was more worried about my wallet with Biden. I like that attitude. Sit back and enjoy the ride. I think we already have started that process of sitting back and enjoying the ride. But I do, to your point, he can multitask, but also especially with this new team that he's picked. Last go around in 2016, new to the politics game, in this sense, especially presidential politics, not prepared with the cabinet picks perhaps the way he should have been, not prepared for some of the dirtiness of Washington. Now he's ready because, yes, he is an outsider at that point, but he's also, as a smart guy, smart businessman, learned the ropes of Washington in the 4 years he was in office and the 4 years after, the more political aspects, and that's a good thing. I'm not saying he's a political animal now. I'm saying he just knows what needs to be done. I think we're seeing that with that meeting, that 100-minute meeting with Republican senators. An interesting point coming from the Post editorial board, and I mentioned this yesterday. We were kind of ahead of the curve on this, but Juan Mercan, the Manhattan Supreme Court justice, they're calling his vendetta against Trump to the level of Captain Ahab level madness. We didn't put it in such succinct terms, but this is what we had said yesterday. Juan Mercan is abusing his power one last time in a bid to ensure that Donald Trump is technically a convicted felon when he takes the oath of office January 20th. I'm telling you, I think the Post watches, frankly speaking. Yes, the term convicted felon doesn't legally apply until you've been sentenced, which is also a requirement for nearly all appeals of a conviction. And Mercan's many errors over the course of the trial are all too likely to result in Trump's conviction being reversed. So the judge has been dragging things out so that he can sentence Trump on Friday, barely a week before the inauguration, and with insufficient time to win that reversal. Mercan on Monday refused to postpone sentencing. A higher state judge has declined to overrule him. Trump asked the U.S. Supreme Court to intervene, and Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's weighing in Thursday morning on why the Supreme Court shouldn't. Meanwhile, Mercan has indicated the sentence will be unconditional discharge, meaning no jail time, no probation, no fine. But Trump's official conviction will remain on record, and that's why he's doing it. It's not, if he's saying, listen, you're not even going to get in any kind of trouble, just don't worry about it. Then it's official that he is a convicted felon. This is, I like that, Captain Ahab level madness. Again, that would allow Democrats and other Trump haters to forever harp on how he's the first convicted felon to become president, no matter how the case proceeds on appeals. It's also a bid to get the president-elect to not bother appealing and to avoid a higher court slapdown of the Manhattan trial judge, once he's again the leader of the free world. He'll have far more important things to do, is the thought. Indeed, Trump has bigger fish to fry even now. The nation's in such a state that he needs to hit the ground running after the inauguration. It's obscene that he may have to spend time next week filing for an emergency appellate hearing in this case to avoid the felon label. Bragg was playing low politics and bringing these charges in the first place. Mercan all too outrageously played along. We've talked about his ties to the Democrat Party, etc. No reasonable person, whether they like Trump or hate Trump, can say that this was a fair trial. This is one of the reasons, Alvin Bragg and Letitia James, these are the reasons why Trump ultimately won. Trump saying back at a rally a long time ago, I'm one indictment away from the White House, and he was right. Alvin Bragg thinking he's a hero, and they might like the fact that he's a convicted felon, but at the end of the day, they helped secure the presidency in the White House for Donald Trump, and I would say the popular vote for Donald Trump because of that lawfare. But continuing, before we take our last break, fact is they've already handed the incoming Trump Justice Department ample grounds to investigate them both for unconstitutional abuse of state power to influence the last federal election. I hope that they do. But New York's higher courts also have a duty to slap down Mercan and his abuses. Trump derangement syndrome has left Mercan a modern Captain Ahab, dooming himself with an obsessive pursuit of his target long past all reason. He's going to go under, tangled in his own harpoon. Let's take our last break, wrap things up on today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Get your last minute comments in.
Most doctors recommend daily walks because of the many health benefits associated with walking. But how do you get healthy circulation boosting activity without leaving your chair? With Legzercise Pro, the natural circulation booster that uses continuous automatic leg movement to soothe pain and promote healthy circulation the natural drug-free way. Soothe pain and calm restless legs. Reduce swelling in your legs, ankles, and feet and stimulate healthy circulation. Stay active with Legzercise Pro.
I'm Nancy O'Dell. This is Crime Expose.
It's chilling, taunting.
We knew exactly who it was.
Blood stains on her shorts.
See you in September.
Welcome to Frankly Speaking, talking to the people that affect your life, that affect all of our day-to-day lives. This is something you're not going to get anywhere else. We've got a lot to offer. There'll be a lot of news, local, regional, national, really the things that affect you. And I think you'll be glad that you tuned in. So think of it as radio on TV. Frankly Speaking, live, 2 hours long, starting at 6 a.m. on WYDC TV Big Fox. This is history making. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street Recording, wrapping up today's edition. A fun, a thrilling edition of Frankly Speaking. Thank you for the comments and all the waves this morning. A comment from a viewer on January the 14th at 1 p.m. Governor Kathy Hochul is giving her State of the State, and I can't wait to see it. Not. Thank you. Yes, on the 14th, and thank you for this, giving me an opportunity to shamelessly plug. She is speaking at 1 p.m. on the 14th with her State of the State. That is why we are having Assemblyman Phil Palmisano on Fridays with Phil, the 17th. He gets back from Albany, has time to digest what he just heard in the State of the State, and then give us all the information right here on Frankly Speaking. So that is going to be, again, Hochul State of the State, the 14th at 1 p.m. Assemblyman Phil Palmisano joining us with Fridays with Phil. That will be on the 17th. And he has a great op-ed out, which we will actually get to on tomorrow's program, hopefully. Superfund Act does nothing but hurt New Yorkers. As he said, I trust our court system will take a detailed look into the law and will come out with a fair, informed ruling. However, we cannot rely entirely on the courts. We must continue to stand up against this radical energy, climate agenda, like the costly Green New Deal being advanced in New York. As legislators, we have an obligation to fight and advocate for policies that help improve the quality of life of the constituents we represent. I will continue to fight and be an advocate for an energy policy that is feasible, protects energy sources, and will make energy more affordable and reliable for New York families and businesses. I will also continue to speak out against and oppose radical and costly energy climate policies like the Climate Change Superfund Act, the HEAT Act, the electric school bus mandate, and other green energy mandates that are being forced upon New York families and businesses. These policies are anti-business, anti-consumer, and are the driving factor in New York's nation-leading outmigration. We can and must do better. So we'll give you more of that on tomorrow's program. Also on tomorrow's program, we'll be talking with Christine Towner about the Senior Companion Program, so make sure you join us for that. And we'll be talking either Friday or Monday with Kelly Fitzpatrick, the chair of the Steuben County Legislature. Really looking forward to speaking with her. It's been a little while. Can't wait to catch up and see how her first year as chair has went. Looking forward to it. Hey, thanks again for joining us. Thank you for all the comments. Thanks for the great conversation. I think we covered it all this morning. We'll be back on tomorrow's program to update you on all the issues of the day, give you all the news of the day as we do every day here on Frankly Speaking. So please join us starting at 6 a.m. weekday mornings with Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV Big Fox. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow morning bright and early. I look forward to it already.
Are you ready for winter in New York State? Ready for thrills like this? Discoveries like this? Views like this? Are you ready to make memories? Plan the perfect trip or have an impromptu getaway. It's time to explore everything that makes New York easy to love. Discover more at iloveny.com.